the moment you go down this road of thinking, hey, it's actually okay to start holding people down and injecting them with something they don't want, or doing that indirectly by cutting them off from society in such a way that they cannot see their family, they cannot go out to the store to buy groceries, so that they're persuaded to voluntarily get the vaccine. Even that is really unacceptable.
Should governments mandate their citizens to take the COVID-19 vaccine? I posed this question to Martin van Staden, a legal researcher at the business group Sakeliga, in a recent episode of my podcast, Solutions with David Ansara. If you enjoyed this discussion, please do consider watching the full interview with Martin. That's linked in the description below. Enjoy. Okay, so Martin, one of the more recent developments is around the vaccine and governments pushing to impose vaccine mandates on their citizens. And you've written a piece in the Daily Friend saying that this is fundamentally illiberal. And you were responding to another piece. And we're recording on Tuesday, the 14th of September, before your debate with some of your interlocutors there. What were some of the arguments that you made in that Daily Friend piece, which we'll link to in the description below?
So I made two broad arguments to respond to two broad arguments that those who favor vaccine mandates and vaccine passports made. So briefly, what my opponents, who I regard as very good liberals and so on, very good friends, so I don't want this to be interpreted as this great fight, but the essence of their argument, firstly, is that the harm principle, mostly associated with John Stuart Mill, is applicable in this case, and that individuals who are unvaccinated pose a real and immediate risk to the liberty of those around them. And if they're not vaccinated, they are in fact infringing upon the individual rights and the lives of those around them. And that's the meta liberal philosophical argument in favor of a vaccine mandate. Now, the more practical argument, I guess, specifically in the South African context, is that we now have this lockdown, this draconian lockdown, and that is, we are all agreed, is a terrible deprivation and an unjustifiable deprivation of individual rights. But the best way to get out of that lockdown is to vaccinate as widely as possible, even vaccinate completely the entire population, and then the lockdown can stop because the risk will then be significantly decreased, if not entirely eliminated. Those are the two broad arguments. Now, my response to that was, in the first place, that I think the harm principle is doing some heavy lifting that it was never meant to do in this context, and it's something we need to be careful about. When John Stuart Mill was writing about the harm principle On Liberty, I struggle to believe that he could have conceived of a government with as wide a scope and a mandate as governments today have given themselves. So I don't think Mill could have possibly entertained the possibility of his harm principle being extended like this. He was a defender, at least in On Liberty, he was a defender of freedom.
Enjoying this analysis? Click here to sign up for our 30-day free trial for more content from the CIA.
And I don't think On Liberty should be used to negate freedom to the extent that we're holding individuals down and injecting things into their bloodstreams that they don't want there. That can never qualify, in my view, as a liberal answer to anything. So that's more of the philosophical point, and I think liberals need to be careful going there. But the more practical point is this phenomenon where we're using government's own prior illiberal authoritarian conduct to justify further illiberal government conduct. And that is what the vaccine mandate or the vaccine passport is, by saying, look, we have this lockdown, which is a statist authoritarian government program. And the way to get rid of that is for mandatory vaccinations, which is a statist authoritarian government program. So it's a self-reinforcing loop that liberals tend to be very good at avoiding, to be honest. You won't easily find a liberal making the argument that that we need closed borders or very restricted immigration simply because government has a generous welfare policy, for instance, because that was government's own decision. We cannot now use government's own statist programs to justify further government statist programs. Now, I think liberals need to be careful here, and I think constitutionalists in general need to be careful here by saying, empowering government more to solve the problems it created through its own expansive power in the past. So those are broadly my two arguments. I think that the liberal case, including liberal limited government, the rule of law, individual rights, militates very, very strongly against vaccine mandates, against vaccine passports, and that we kind of need to stay the course there rather than becoming too, for lack of a better word, too nuanced and too reactive to the peculiarities of our present situation, so as to really render our principles meaningless.
Yeah, and I suppose one of the arguments with the vaccine is, yes, it may be efficacious in terms of limiting the severity of COVID, that you might still be hospitalized, but you're less likely to die if you were previously vaccinated. But the real crux of the question is, does it improve or reduce chances of transmission to those who may not otherwise have it? But my response to that would be, well, then those people who are concerned about that risk themselves should be taking the vaccine. And I guess it is just a question of individual choice, right? You know, people make all sorts of health-related choices with their lives, how much alcohol they drink or don't drink, how much fatty foods they eat. And, you know, I think you also have to accept that sometimes people will make choices that are to the detriment of their health, but you know, ultimately you do have to respect that.
Yeah, we need to accept that a liberal society is a risky society, especially with globalization. I mean, there was a time in the distant past where people lived separately as very small and quite inbred communities. But the moment you open up the door to people from around you coming into your society, you need to accept that a certain level of risk is going to come with that. When you're in society, it's risky. When you're in your house alone, like I am now, it's relatively safe. Now we need to decide, what do we want? Do we want a society, or do we want a very loose association of atoms or islands? I don't think anyone wants that, least of all liberals. Liberals, good capitalists like us, believe that there's a value to be had for the division of labor, and that simply means that we need people around us. And that means you could pick up the common cold, you could pick up TB, you could pick up COVID, any number of things from people around you. And the answer to regulating this relationship can never be, in my view at least, that we need this authoritarian institution in the center of it all, injecting people or directing their personal affairs in such a way that totally deprives them of really their self-ownership, which always starts with your body. And I must qualify what I'm saying here by the fact that I'm very pro-vaccine. I'm not anti-vax or anything like that. I plan to get the vaccine myself. I think the evidence shows it's quite efficacious. So by all means, get the vaccine. But the moment you go down this road of thinking, hey, it's actually okay to start holding people down and injecting them with something they don't want, or doing that indirectly by cutting them off from society in such a way that they cannot see their family, they cannot go out to the store to buy groceries, so that they're persuaded to voluntarily get the vaccine. Even that is really unacceptable in a liberal, spontaneously organized society.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this analysis, you might want to check out the full interview with Martin van Staden. That's linked over here. And I'd also be hugely grateful if you could subscribe to my other channel. That's linked over here. Until next time, take care.